So again, thank you all for joining us for tonight's informational session with the Meinig School of Biomedical Engineering at Cornell University. We have a great session for you here today to give you a little bit more information about the biomedical engineering program here at Cornell, and also give you an opportunity to connect with a number of current and former undergraduate students who have gone through the program here at Cornell. I do want to start off tonight's session introducing the director of the biomedical engineering program here at Cornell, Dr. Marilyn Vandermeulen, who can get us started today.
Thanks, Ryan. I want to welcome you all to our informational webinar. So as Ryan said, my name is Marjolein van der Meulen, and I'm the director of the Meinig School of Biomedical Engineering. And I'd like to start by congratulating you on your admission to Cornell. And then, as Ryan said, make a couple opening remarks, a little bit about Cornell and Cornell Engineering, and then we'll talk about the program. I wanted to first, though, start with the fact that, as we all know, we're living through a bit of an unusual time, and the world has changed a lot in the past year. One thing that I think has come out of the current pandemic is the relevance of biomedical engineering at this unusual time. And our faculty and our students and our alumni are involved in activities such as vaccine development, respirator design, and predicting disease. And these are all things that are incredibly important at the current period. In addition, Cornell, I'm really proud to say, has taken a scientific approach to the pandemic that has allowed us to open for fall 2020. So we've been open as a university for the past year. Cornell took advantage of expertise in the faculty to model disease spread before our opening to predict what our best and worst case scenarios might look like. We've been testing everybody on campus through our diagnostics lab in the vet college. And we've also tracked the cases on campus closely. We even have an on-campus hotel that has served for quarantine and isolation as people that were infected were identified and close contacts. And the good news is that we're looking forward to a more or less return to the classroom in fall 2021, although it'll be with masks. So that's all a very encouraging situation, and we look forward to welcoming you to campus. So we want to give you a little information through this platform about Cornell Biomedical Engineering to preview what a biomedical engineering major would look like as you decide whether to join us at Cornell or not. First of all, I wanted to mention that Cornell Engineering has a very rich and deep history within the university. Two of the engineering departments were in fact present and part of the original founding of the university in 1865. In addition, Cornell has been co-ed and integrated since its founding, and that means that engineering has been this also, and we've had many firsts in that regard. In terms of the engineering college itself, we're a very broad college with a range of specialties, including ones that you might be familiar with, like mechanical engineering, which was one of the original two departments at founding, and things that are less familiar, such as applied and engineering physics. So this brings me to biomedical engineering itself. First and foremost, we are engineers. We build things, we analyze, we design, and we test objects and processes. We're the youngest department in the College of Engineering. The department was founded in 2004, and we turned 15 a couple of years ago, and we're looking forward in several more years to our 20th birthday. And we were founded as a graduate-only department, and so our undergraduate major is much newer and was actually just begun in 2015. We started with a small sophomore class of students that were already at Cornell, and the major has built up to the current size. So this year we'll be graduating our fourth class of biomedical engineering students. One thing that stayed with, as I mentioned, the history of Cornell is that we were co-ed from the start. And one thing that has stayed in I think the ethos of Cornell engineering is diversity, and in particular, gender diversity. Our College of Engineering is 50-50 female. And on top of that, biomedical engineering is far above that actually, and sort of leading the nation with far more than 50% women students, which is quite impressive. The national average in engineering is around 21% graduating in a class. And so that's something that we're really proud in how Cornell is doing. So this gives you a little bit of sense of biomedical engineering and the College of Engineering at Cornell. Now I want to turn over the webinar to our Associate Director for Undergraduate Affairs, Jonathan Butcher. And Professor Butcher will tell you more about our program and the required elements, and again, what it would look like to be a student at Cornell in biomedical engineering. So take it away, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. It's a pleasure to be here. Congratulations again, all of you, for becoming admitted to Cornell. We hope you will all get as much information as you can from this particular webinar so that you can make the best informed decision, and also to be able to ask completely new questions with our student panel. So what I'd like to do is give you kind of a short overview of the major as Cornell has developed it over these last several years. Biomedical engineering, as you may know, is a pretty heterogeneous field. It reaches into a lot of different areas, and we, as a department, we're very keen on designing this major to be able to fill specific needs, both intellectually, but also within the critical 21st century industrial needs for biomedical engineering. And so, trying to move my slides, figure that this wouldn't work. There we go. So biomedical engineers kind of sit at this interface between life science and engineering. And as such, they bring in specific components of those general discipline spaces. However, biomedical engineering is synergistic of both of those and distinct in ways that I'd like to describe. So life sciences is heavily involved with using hypothesis-driven research to understand how biological processes work. And biomedical engineers also are heavily engaged in that kind of inquiry, but we are also very much interested in using that understanding to drive change. So to improve, restore function, and using those same systems to be able to control the processes rather than merely understand them. And from the engineering standpoint, we certainly use a lot of the latest quantitative imaging, quantitative testing, medical devices that you might be familiar with. But biomedical engineering has a very unique engineering specific discipline, which is trying to understand how living systems operate in high variability, rapid innovation, uncertainty. And these are features that are often not seen in other majors. And so it's a unique engineering space that we have to move within. So you would get great training in those spaces. And so a lot of academic curricula have been developed to teach biomedical engineering. And we view our combination of pedagogy, curriculum, and experiential learning that we kind of synergistically assemble within this major is going to provide a unique educational experience to prepare you, not just for the 21st century jobs, but just a lifetime of learning in this space. And so some of the things that we articulate that are really important is for you to be able to analyze and represent complex systems. We also want you to articulate how natural design principles control these operations of these systems. And so as engineers, it's really important that you learn about human health as design constraints, so that you can think about not only just the biology of the underlying system, but also social factors, human factors, all the kinds of things that might influence how a device will even be received, let alone work when it's implanted. And also very important in our majors that you can practice creativity. So it's not about building one device and one signature event, but really practicing your creativity over time. And so the way we've done this in our major is we actually have faculty who are curricular experts in pedagogy, like actually know how to teach material in very novel ways and have published even in education research journals. Furthermore, we've flipped our entire curriculum so that you guys get to see the application spaces first rather than last, so that you'll be able to dig deeper into the content of your choice after seeing the entire menu, so that you'll be more motivated and driven to solve the problems of your interest. And furthermore, we bathe that within experiential learning, which is we view as a very valuable component, a complementary component with curriculum, so that you get real world experience. And not only do you get the opportunity of bringing your engineering knowledge into that real world experience, but you also learn how to reflect on that experience and bring that into your engineering as you move forward. So that combination is how we design our curriculum over the sequence of your major. And so what does this major look like? Well, all engineering majors at Cornell start with a common engineering core. And these are the typical classes like math and physics and biology, chemistry, computer science. And so every student has the opportunity to select the menu of those classes that would prepare them for the majors that they want to affiliate into. And so you would choose a major at the end of your third semester and affiliate into that major. And then in biomedical engineering, that's where you would start those application specific cornerstones, where you learn all the different aspects of biomedical engineering that are geared for this 21st century workforce. After you take those, you'll then split up into a set of concentrations, and those concentrations provide a depth of content that's specific for being able to attack problems in that specific concentrations application space. In parallel with that, you take a core sequence of engineering analysis of biological systems. One of the unique specialties of biomedical engineering in Cornell is our ability to analyze physiology, pathophysiology, and regenerative medicine, all of these things as multi-scale events, which means that there are events driving disease and health and regeneration that occur at tissue scales, molecular scales, cellular scales, and integrating all of that knowledge is really beneficial for designing good therapy and good remedies. So we take you through all of that system so you'll be able to have those tools. And then finally, we put that together in a design and practice sequence. And so our major is also unique in that we train students in almost an apprentice-like manner to be able to operate on types of professional tools and professional workflows that you would see in industry, in combined with your ability to design actual products that you could even pitch in business pitches and stuff like that. So that's how our system works. And so the sequence of this core, again, the design is to be able to give you that understanding of how biology, health, disease operates on all of these different biological scales, okay, from organs down to molecules and how they feed into each other. And so that requires a specific engineering knowledge of that system to be able to manipulate that system. So we try to inculcate lots of the human health factors that are broadly involved in almost any kind of device or any kind of way that you would want to intervene in the human body. For example, immune response and coagulation, infection. These affect every single system, no matter what concentration you would actually affiliate into. And so those knowledge bases and skills are very important in improving medical device design beyond any other sort of traditional engineering approach. And so what are these concentrations? Well, they have acronyms for each one. And so we have 4. They're called molecular cellular systems engineering. So this concentration is associated with understanding and quantitatively analyzing cellular systems, say anything from organoids to how bacteria in a microbiome might work, and being able to manipulate those systems to provide either a community benefit or overall patient health. And so there's the next one is biomaterials and drug delivery. And this is about how to design materials that instead of being as inert or passive in the body, but actually devices that work with your host immune system to provide the response that's needed. And so these are very much more in the active sense of the phrase. And so we have experts in this area that are designing brand new polymers and thinking about lots of different ways that you can release drugs in time and in space. So you can learn about that part. Next, we have biomedical imaging and instrumentation. So Cornell has been one of the leaders in optical microscopy and physics and has invented many types of imaging technology that are used all across the world. And so students in this area will get the privilege of being able to learn how to design technology of their own, how to use this technology to image living tissues, living samples, and make better instrumentation. And then the last area is biomedical mechanics and mechanobiology. So this area is associated with how the human body as a mechanical system exerts forces, receives forces, and all of the devices that are involved with either providing extra force when needed or blocking force that you don't want. And these are very much multi-scale things, anything from designing the interior of automobiles all the way down with designing how individual cells may sense blood flow differently. And so students in this area will learn all of those scales and how to engineer in those different places. And so the experiential learning component, like I said, is a very important parallel aspect of our training. And there are many different ways that students can get to these kinds of experience. Anything from doing research in faculty labs to becoming teaching assistants to engaging in outreach all across the upstate New York region. So we've had long established partnerships with schools in very rural districts. We've engaged with Native American communities. We have lots of different ways that students have been able to make a big impact in the local communities, including engaging directly with teachers to develop new curriculum that they can implement in their schools. Another thing that Cornell is well known for is this concept of project teams, where students actually develop teams of people that actually build a system to compete in a competition, but these projects also extend in the sense they have their own alumni over decades in some cases that provides a rich environment, not only for networking, but also for skills building. And we really value the development of skills every bit as much as, sort of earning grades as a mechanism of success at Cornell. And so in the final year, every student will be part of a team that will have students from different concentrations working together to design a device. And our hypothesis, our thesis is that students from these different concentrations will then be able to be in charge of their unique discipline expertise, just like you will in the real world. And so getting practice doing that in this system is the best way, we think, to build devices that no one person could have done on their own. And we bathe this with industry experts, clinical experts, and so these teams get the opportunity to engage lots of different stakeholders and present their work when done in front of industry and community panelists, and they get to showcase all of their different devices. It's a really great experience at the end of the year. Another thing that BME is designed to do is to be flexible. And what I mean by that is that you can participate in a lot of the traditional things that a liberal arts university with a strong engineering program would be able to do, which is things like study abroad and to get a co-op or pursue an honors thesis, or even tie in additional degrees, whether it's a Master of Engineering or an MBA. There's also a super large suite of minors, all for your ability to engage into and parallel with your major. And so I'm sure the students in the panel can give you a lot more insight into each of them, because some of them engage in those. We also have students that have been athletes, in Division I teams, and so it's been flexible enough to allow those students to be able to access those different opportunities on campus. And so to give you a sense of how we've grown in our short existence, you can see this is some data over the recent several years showing our growth. Also looking at our distribution of where students go after they graduate. It's pretty well distributed between industry and grad school and medical school. Again, we want to be able to allow those different postgraduate different areas. We've also been privileged to be ranked in the top 20 ever since we started, which is pretty good for having no graduating students to be ranked so high when, as you probably know, competition is pretty fierce. And so, these are programs that have 50 years plus of experience, and we're hoping to grow more, and we're hoping to be able to have you along with us in doing that. So with that, I guess, do we have a period, you think, of questions for faculty and then move to the student panel, if there is any?
Yeah, I think we have some time where we can do about 5 to 10 minutes of faculty questions. We have some that are coming in through the Q&A.
Okay.
One of those, could you elaborate a little bit more about the MEng program, as well as possibly, continuing along the BS MEng pathway, and then maybe the BS MEng MBA pathway?
Sure. So I think at least one of the students I know will be able to talk about it, but in general, there's a different level of demand for a Master of Engineering, for having an additional year of professional experience within industry. There's also lots of different ways that students want to access a different area of BME. So they might affiliate in one concentration and then do something different in their Master of Engineering. There's lots of different ways that people choose to gain this additional knowledge. Another thing that we think is really useful in our Master of Engineering program is that we give even more professional training, so a completely different design sequence. So you're not really just repeating the same thing, but you actually get an even deeper experience. And a lot of students really value that combination approach. And so what we have worked out for our students is that there's an opportunity to enter into this path early so that you can graduate in 4.5 years with a master's. There's also an opportunity to do that master's in 5 years because it's a 1-year program. And also there are scholarship opportunities and other programs to allow you to get an MBA in addition to an MEng. Obviously it's a little bit longer, but students, depending on what they're looking for in their career trajectory, can access those different paths.
Jonathan, can you stop? Can you turn off the slide sharing, then we can see the people?
Sure.
And so it looks like some questions have been answered as well. So.
Oh, in the chat.
So and so to respond to the question about opportunities for BME majors outside of engineering, at Cornell, Cornell's a really broad-based university, and so you have the opportunity to take classes all over campus. And the engineering requirements for all majors are that you take one liberal studies class per semester in the 6 semesters after freshman year, and freshman year you take a writing seminar. So those liberal studies classes can be outside are outside by definition the College of Engineering. And then also you have 2 advisor approved electives that you can use as you would like. And often people come in with, if you come in with AP credit, you can use that extra space in your program to also take classes across the university. And again, Cornell is really broad-based. And so for example, there's a very well-known wines class in the hotel school that many students take. And so there's many opportunities to broaden your base, I think, beyond engineering at the university. If the question is about after you graduate, I think an engineering degree, any engineering degree places you well to go into a variety of industries besides engineering. And I don't know if anyone on any of the students in the call will address that, but for example, consulting is an area that often hires engineers that's not directly engineering. So I think there's lots of opportunities there.
Yeah, so I see a question in the chat also about how many courses overlap between BME and pre-med. That was something that we designed from the beginning in the sense that should students choose to want to do a pre-health career, we have what we call a path through the major. We can adjust some of the chemistry requirements so that you only have to take 1 additional class and be able to satisfy all the pre-medical coursework in addition to your BME major. Let's see. I'm trying to think of other ones. So for the first year, this is a question. BME students there's no such thing as a BME student in the first year. So everybody is admitted to the College of Engineering, and you have basically free reign to take classes within the engineering core curriculum. What we do is we list a set of classes that if you want to affiliate with BME, you got to take these classes. Biology, physics, chemistry, math, computer science. And so if you've taken those classes and, don't fail them or whatever, then you'll have the opportunity to affiliate into BME. So every student in the first year, even the first 3 semesters, are all kind of in the same boat in terms of the, not being a BME student, but they can certainly take classes in those semesters. For example, we have what's called a introduction to BME class. It's called an ENGRI, and so students could take that class. We also have a distribution course, is what it's called, that students could take in the 3rd semester. So really, each semester there's a touchdown space that you can start to develop relationships with students that have the same shared interests, even though you have the flexibility to explore lots of other majors. I don't know, Ryan, how you want, there's lots of different questions. So I don't know which ones you want me to do versus the other students versus.
So I see a question here about approximately how many undergraduates are in BME. I guess that's maybe a me question, so maybe I'm jumping on that one. We're averaging currently around 40 students per class currently. You know, we've kind of had a range as we're getting started. First class, so Jordan was in our first class. Lucky students who kind of were already here at Cornell when the major started, and they were able to make it work. So we had a nice small group with their class that was just 18 students. And then since then, we've gone as high as 50 students in recent classes. So we're averaging about 40 so far in our young history.
Mhm.
I guess internships generally, I think maybe we'll field that one. I'll toss that one out to you all. What are some internship opportunities available through Cornell, including in some larger cities like New York City, also maybe Boston, West Coast, San Francisco Bay Area?
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of question we could ask them when Marilyn and I step off, so they can have you know, free discussion. But what we will say is that we've worked hard to develop actually direct visits to these different industrial bases, where we even take buses of students down to check out these different areas and you know, meet some of these groups of people together. So there's opportunities to explore internships in, you know, virtual and in-person ways.
Well, we hope there'll be in-person opportunities next year. We obviously haven't had them this year, but we've done these career treks in the past, and we've tried to move them to virtual this year. And to some extent, it's made some things more reachable than they were before, because you don't have to go there in person. So we're still figuring all that out as well. It's been a lot of adapting this year, of course.
Yeah, one activity that I wanted to mention real quick that Cornell has been engaged in for the past few years, last year notwithstanding, that has been a really impactful experience for many students is a research exchange that goes on with Tanzania. We have a technical college in Tanzania where students that are in their biotechnology program actually engage with Cornell biomedical engineers, and they actually immerse each other in each other's culture for several weeks over the summer and then into the early fall, and they develop a joint design project that they then explore and develop when they go back to their original places. And it's been a really nice opportunity to not only engage with a very different group of people and experience that culture, but also to figure out how to work together in a very global environment to solve global health needs. And so it's really an enriching experience. And that's just one of the things that we use as an experiential learning framework.
So some of you have typed into the chat questions as well. It's a little tricky. So we've been looking mainly at the questions in the Q&A section and not so much in the chat, just FYI. But in the chat, there's a question around a foreign, do we require students to take a foreign language? No, but you can use a foreign language as your liberal studies if you would like. So that's one of the areas of liberal studies that it's an option to do. And then, yeah, so another question, right, also from Jason here is, for the first year, do BME students take the classes with other engineering majors? So that's this common core that Jonathan referred to. So the first year, all engineering students take the math, the physics, the chemistry, introduction to computing. They take all those courses together. So your first year is more or less all together with engineering. And for example, the math calculus is offered specific to engineering. So it's an engineering math that there's examples taken that are more relevant to engineering than if you were a math major, for example, or if you're an arts and sciences major as well. And again, I think the panel could potentially address some of those specifics also later. And there was a question also, have BME graduates been admitted to Cornell Medical School? I don't know if we have any in our, again, we've only graduated, yes, we have. Okay, we only graduated 3 classes, but we definitely have students in medical school for sure.
Yeah. So, and we have one specific student who's in the Tri-University program, MD PhD program with Weill Cornell, Rockefeller.
Memorial Sloan Kettering.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Yep.
Yep.
And then the question about overlap between BME, the BME degree and pre-med. Jonathan, do you want to address that? You've thought some about that?
Yeah, I thought I already did. I was trying to take a look at the
Okay.
chat. So we like I said, you only have to take one additional class to satisfy all of those criteria. So we try to make it pretty achievable.
Officially 2 extra classes now that we no longer require the bio lab. Now bio lab plus the organic chemistry.
No, I get, oh,
But-
okay. I see. Yeah,
But still kind of the same because now you've got 1 less required course.
right.
I think the question about the trifecta, studying abroad, doing a co-op, and pursuing a minor within 4 undergraduate years might have some challenges. It'll depend a little bit on your background and your maybe if you have AP credit or not and things like that. So I think doing all 3 of those might have some challenges in it, in all honesty.
But I think Haley can have an opportunity to address how we as a faculty are willing to work with students to figure out unique paths that they want to achieve. And when there's a will, there's a way.
Yes. And non-STEM minors are absolutely possible. In fact, I think this is a great place to do that. Unfortunately, many students don't think about that. And often when I was, I was faculty in mechanical and aerospace engineering before I became the director of biomedical engineering. And back when I was involved in exit surveys with our seniors graduating, one of their biggest regrets was not taking more classes outside the College of Engineering by the time, and they sort of realized this when they were a senior and they wish they had looked around, you know, Cornell wide a little earlier. So doing a minor that's in a non-engineering area is definitely something that pulls you outside. And you could use some of your liberal studies courses towards that, although you have to have some distribution of classes for the liberal studies requirement. You can't have all your liberal studies be in a single department. But again, you could use your advisor approved electives to combine some things also.
Yeah, one thing that I like about, that I appreciate about Cornell in that regard is that, you know, when you want to explore something that's outside the major that you chose, Cornell's also really good at that. So it's not like you know, there's a big drop off after BME to other majors, but they're really also very much in the forefront. So when you take a class, say in mechanical engineering, while a BME major or computer science or whatever, like it's also basically a top 10 education all the way around. So that you can be, you know, kind of assured that you're getting top shelf, you know, sort of anywhere. Let's see.
Well, it sounds like you were kind of hinting at some. It sounds like you were hinting at some students might have some good answers to some of these questions. So perhaps I think you're right.
Yeah, I'm looking at most of these questions that I see, and they're pretty much ones that students should probably be the ones addressing anyway. So it's probably a good time to transition to the panel.
All right. Excellent. Well,
So
thank you very much.
I was gonna say both Jonathan and I are available by email if that's helpful. We're all over the web. And if you want to send us direct questions, please do so. But I think you're going to talk really to you're going to hear from the experts now. So please take advantage of that more so than what we know, really. So thanks all.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
All right. Bye.
All right. The adults are out of the room. And we can introduce our panel here of esteemed BME students. So thank you all again for the wonderful questions that are coming in. We are going to do our best to get to all of the outstanding questions, either via typing them in the Q&A feature and keep them coming. Please do keep them coming in there. Please do feel free to re-enter questions if you want to make sure you get a student perspective, even if it's already been answered by the faculty member. Feel free to put it again out there. Keep those questions coming as we go through. I do want to kick off our student panel and have each of you just briefly introduce yourself and maybe talk about some of your experiences, kind of what brought you to BME and either where you are, where you're going next, where you're hoping to go next as well. So I will start with the square that I see first on my panelist board. Let's go with Jordan, class of 2018, the inaugural BME class.
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Jordan. I graduated in 2018, so I came to Cornell when there wasn't a BME major. I had actually been interested in BME when I was applying and ended up coming here anyway because I thought the other opportunities were totally worth it. I ended up joining the first class of BME, which was a lot of fun, and I spent 3 years doing undergrad research in the Vanasser lab in BME and the Estroff lab in material science. I also interned at Novartis. I spent a summer at Stanford doing research. I TA'd for 2 of the BME major courses, 3030, which is the instrumentation core class that everyone takes, and then 3310, which is medical imaging, which people who are on the instrumentation and imaging track take, and also concentrated in instrumentation and imaging with lean towards the computer science side of things. And then outside of that, I was the co-founder of the undergrad BMES. I was involved in engineering ambassadors. I was president of the fencing club. I taught for Splash, and I was in APO, which is a not really Greek service organization. So I would answer any questions about anything having to do with any of that. Oh, and now I'm doing my PhD at Harvard and MIT.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to pass it off to Haley.
Hi there, my name's Haley. I graduated in 2019, and like Professor Butcher alluded to, I was kind of an oddball. I was the first co-op student of the BME department. I did my first co-op at Toyota inside crash safety, and then returned for a second one. And now I'm there full time as a crash safety engineer, specifically working in the area of pedestrian protection. And while I was at Cornell, I did a lot of things, probably more than I should have. I was a resident advisor for freshmen. I was really involved with the Society of Women Engineers. I did some stuff with BMES, like Jordan mentioned. I did a lot of volunteering in the Ithaca community. I did undergraduate research with Professor Vandermeulen, who just left us. And I also did a summer research program at Vanderbilt. So I've kind of done a bunch of things. So if you have any questions about that, I'm sure there's things I'm forgetting, but happy to answer any questions you have.
All right. Kevin, I see you next. Send it up your way.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin. I am a senior biomedical engineering student concentrating in biomaterials and drug delivery. Brief overview about my involvements. I've been doing research in the BME department for a few years now. I'm in the Putnam lab. I do some research on biomaterials that can be used to treat dry eye disease. I'm currently working actually on an honors thesis right now using that research. In regards to some of my other research experiences, over the last few summers, I've been working with Weill Cornell Medicine and Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City. I know someone had a question about internships in New York City, so happy to answer anything about that. A little bit about me beyond research. I've had some really great opportunities just to lead some project teams. I was also the photography director for Creme de Cornell, which is a food magazine on campus. And I'm also a member of the Theta Tau professional engineering fraternity. So that's a bit about me. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Kristen, I see you next.
Hi everyone, I'm Kristen and I'm a senior in BME as well, concentrating in MCSE or molecular, cellular, and systems engineering. I'm on more of a computational / data science route, so a lot of my involvement at Cornell is kind of a mix between BME things and non-BME things. I think someone also had a question about like neuroscience. As I was going to get into, in terms of research, I've worked in Dr. Linster's lab doing research in computational neuroscience and have also interned at Harvard Med as a computational neuroscience research intern. This year, I'm also president of Cornell's undergraduate BMES chapter and am also a member of the biomedical engineering team on campus, biomedical device engineering team on campus. In the past, I've also TA'd the intro short course to an introductory Python course. So nothing in the BME department, but as I said, things outside of BME, so in the CS department. I'm also a co-founder of a biomedical startup called Vita Innovations, and that was founded a little under a year ago. That was after my team won the AI Health Hackathon in New York City that was hosted by Weill Cornell last February, I believe. And yeah, in terms of internships, I already mentioned one of the research internships I was involved with, but also last summer I interned at Merck, which is a pharmaceutical company, and I interned in both the IT and manufacturing divisions, and will be returning back to Merck in July to work full-time in their IT emerging talent rotational program.
Awesome. All right, Steffi, I'll pass to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Steffi Lux and I'm also a senior BME major concentrating in molecular cellular systems engineering with Kristen. So I think I'm the only pre-med on the panel. I'm actually pre-MD PhD, so happy to answer any pre-med questions. I'm also doing the honors thesis, sort of leaning into the PhD side of things with Kevin, so there's that. In terms of my involvement on campus, I have been an undergraduate research assistant with the Fishbach Lab for the past 3 years. That's the lab that I'm doing my thesis with. I am the outgoing president of Engineers for a Sustainable World, which is not one of the biomedical engineering project teams on campus, but is one of the project teams that Cornell prides itself on so much for a very good reason. It's been a wonderful opportunity. I am also a volunteer at Cayuga Medical Center. I started doing that in my junior fall. I've sort of bounced around there. I've been a COVID screener. I've been in the chemotherapy suite. And most recently, I've been working in the rehabilitation unit, helping patients there. So happy to answer questions about that. What else? I'm involved in Rise Dance Group, which is fun, something different outside of engineering. Wow, yeah. Oh, so internships. To sort of go through that, my freshman summer, I stayed here and I was just doing work in the Fishbach Lab. That was my introduction to that. My sophomore summer, I was at Johns Hopkins in an REU program there in partnership with the NIH, which was a really great experience. Last summer, I was supposed to go to the Mayo Clinic to do another REU program there, but it was unfortunately canceled. So we had sort of an online program, and I also continued my research with the Fishbach Lab over the summer. And that pretty much sums up everything. Next year, I'll be going to the NIH, working as a post-baccalaureate research assistant in the Hernandez Lab, which is a surgical oncology group. And I'm really excited to start that.
Awesome. All right, and Caleb, bringing us home, representing the junior class.
Hey y'all, I'm Caleb McCurdy. I'm a current junior studying or concentrating in biomaterials and drug delivery. I am an undergraduate research assistant in the Zhang lab, working with lipid nanoparticles. I've also worked at, I think my sophomore summer, worked at a lab down at Virginia Commonwealth University, studying tumor organoids and cancer metastasis. I am also a member of the Cornell track and field and cross-country teams. And in the past, I've been a peer advisor and am a current TA for biomolecular thermodynamics.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. So one of the things I notice, hearing you all talk a lot, is BME students kind of are involved in a lot of research experiences. And I think that's something, that I saw in a lot of the questions during the registration process, and then also throughout so far tonight. So what are, how difficult is it to get into a research experience? And, kind of what are the steps that some of you all did to kind of secure those experiences, whether it be a summer experience or it be something here at Cornell on campus?
Yeah, I guess.
Go first. I actually started out in a different research lab than the one I ended up graduating with. And so just going through 2 research experiences, you can tell that that's possible just in one person. You also don't necessarily have to do research within the BME department. I know people who've done it in just pure biology, or maybe in the mechanical engineering or chemical engineering or even electrical engineering department. So there's lots of opportunities to kind of just get into a lab, and if you don't like it, you can end up switching out of it, which is something that I did. But it just takes a little bit of research on your part, looking at professors, seeing what you're interested in, sending them emails, contacting graduate students, things like that. But I'm sure if the time comes and you need to know about that process, you can ask maybe an older BME student when you get to Cornell, or maybe even ask Ryan.
Yeah. Any other pieces of advice that folks had? Kevin, how about you?
Yeah, I guess I'll just add, BME is a super interdisciplinary major. So depending on sort of what you are very interested in, maybe it's something more strictly biological, or something maybe more super mechanical. There are lots of different labs in various different departments that are related to BME, but might not necessarily be in the BME department, that can do research that'll interest you. But generally, I've had really positive experiences with the faculty in BME. With the lab that I'm in now, it's the same lab that I've been in. All I did was just reach out to the professor via email. And if you kind of just make sure that you're staying in communication with them, it's pretty easy to just get to speak to them and see what opportunities are available.
Yeah, and for me, you know, I would add on the undergraduate coordinator side, and some of the things that we, you know, we reinforce when you're reaching out to those faculty members is really just to put yourself out there and personalize kind of what you're interested in doing with research and why the faculty member's interest is of interest to you. You know, what draws you to their lab. So don't go mass emailing 50 form emails to just all of the engineering faculty. You know, make it specific, personalize yourself. And I'm sure you all have practiced doing that, you know, through your college application essays. Same thing once you get onto campus. You know, do that when you're applying for jobs, do that when you're applying for research, no matter where you end up.
And one more thing that I would add is sometimes like professors get like really swamped with a lot of emails. And so one thing that's really great about Cornell is that you really are able to meet a lot of like your TAs and things like that who are already in research labs. And that's what really helped me is, you know, the professors a lot of the times really encourage the undergraduates to be a part of the lab. They're just so like busy, like sometimes too busy that like, they're not really going to see your email. But a lot of the TAs will really help you out and get you connected with certain professors, and that's really helpful.
Absolutely. One other thing that folks mentioned is internships and co-ops, and some of these other summer opportunities. What are some ways that that you found out about these opportunities? And what are some of the things that you've done yourselves? What are the things that you know that your fellow BME classmates have done as well?
I know the particular program I did that was like with the NIH at Hopkins. I heard about that through my PI, so that was through a Cornell connection. And then my other Mayo internship, I heard about just through like personal connections. So I think it's sort of important to keep in mind both the people you know sort of around you already, as well as your connections at Cornell. The career fair is also pretty effective. I know a lot of people who've gotten internships through that. So definitely go to that, especially if you're looking for more industry type internship experiences. But I think just in general, your personal network can't be understated. And then professors or other people you know at Cornell can also really help like tell you about internships and help you find the thing that would be the best fit for you.
Yeah, I would definitely say the career fair that's both in the spring and the fall are really great opportunities for finding internships. Definitely keep in touch with the people who you network with at those career fairs. So for example, like if you end up interviewing with someone, or if you speak to one of the recruiters at the fair, definitely keep in touch, show that you're really interested, you didn't just show up to their booth to like just like speak to them for no reason or like show passive interest. Like you really want to demonstrate active interest. And then another opportunity for people in New York State, if you're from New York State, I know that Cornell is part of like the NYC PSC program, so like the Public Service Corps program. They offer a lot of different opportunities within the 5 boroughs in New York State. So like, and you could cater it towards like generally wherever you're interested in. So they have things in like, I think consulting, engineering, I don't know what other fields there are, but like pretty much a wide variety of fields that you may be interested in. So definitely check that out. I think Cornell Career Services might have like a link or something, but yeah.
Awesome. And yeah, and I know, we do our best to continue to share opportunities that come through our office. We have an undergraduate listserv that we always send opportunities out through. I'm sure everyone can attest here that I spam them with a lot of things, but it tends to mostly be research opportunities, summer opportunities, internships. We share things on Cornell Career Services job website that they use is Handshake. So we share opportunities that we see on there. And of course, we support students building up their network through the alumni network that we have connected on LinkedIn as well. So we always share those opportunities through that as well. And we're continuing to update our alumni database on the BME website to share opportunities where BME graduates end up also. So what are, you all mentioned a lot of different types of, activities, extracurricular activities, from leading organizations, doing peer advising, research, starting student groups. What are some ways that you're able to balance all of these activities with school, plus also manage to have some free time? And also, do you sleep? A fundamental question as well.
I can start. I think, so yes, I do sleep. Some nights more than others, but I always manage to sleep enough. I think in terms of managing my time, I just really try to keep like a good to-do list and checklist of everything that needs to happen and when it needs to occur. So like I have sort of a semester overview calendar with like major deadlines in it. And then on a week-to-week basis, I just like have a list of sort of like each class I'm in and every club or activity, and like, okay, this week, like, what do I need to do for each of these things? And I just kind of like write it into the checklist and I check it off as I go through the week. And then at the end of the week, I sort of cycle through and think, okay, how about this week? So yeah, I have sort of a broad overview and then sort of a more detailed one that I do, and that works pretty well for me. But yeah, I'm sure everyone else can offer their advice too.
I know there was one specific application that Benjamin asked about student athletics. One good thing about Cornell is that like all classes end at, I think, around 4:30, and that's when like it's required to end then, and so you have from 4:30 till 7:30 for just designated for your athletics. So they do a good job of balancing that. As for like traveling, the professors are generally pretty flexible. If you you can get notes from other people for like missing classes, but there's generally professors are pretty accepting of that. It's difficult to it's manageable to balance everything. You got to be proactive and get your stuff done. It's definitely you're definitely able to get enough sleep and be able to perform kind of at your best. As for if engineers are generally in athletics, at least on the cross country team, we have like probably half of our team is almost engineers. So it's definitely, there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of help, and you'll be fine.
Yes, I'm gonna echo Steffi's point about like a weekly structure. I think in high school, that was something that I never did. You know, you kind of get like nightly assignments and you just kind of do them day by day. But sort of once you get to college, you get like bigger sort of problem set assignments that are due like every week. And so that sort of time frame to get them done is extended, and you really need to learn how to sort of like structure yourself on that weekly basis so that you can manage all of these different things that are kind of due far in advance and not necessarily something you have to get done right away. So that was a great tip. I also think sort of finding things extracurricularly that you're passionate about also really helps. There's like so many things to get involved in on campus. And like for me, it kind of took some time for me to find specifically what I was interested in. But once I kind of found that, I think it really helped to just like narrow it down to things that I really enjoy doing. And because I really enjoyed doing them, I kind of became more productive when I did them.
I would also kind of encourage having a strong network of friends within your major or like in classes that you're taking. I think it's really helpful to be able to study and compare notes with, or like kind of just bounce off ideas for like assignments, just to make sure that you kind of know that you're like on the right track and you can be reassured. And then also having someone to kind of like if you want to like I guess ask questions to someone. I think that's also a good thing to have like some people who kind of understand like the material that you're learning at the moment. So just great study buddies in general.
So Steffi, there was a question too about just kind of balancing, you know, BME and all of these extracurriculars, but also preparing for MCAT or med school. Can you talk a little bit about your experience kind of balancing BME as well as being pre-health?
Yes. So I knew I wanted a PhD before I decided I was pre-med. So I went pre-med quite late in my sophomore spring. But I'm here to attest that I did it. You can get through it in even just 3 semesters, which is what I ended up doing. Because I started so late and I wasn't really on like the BME pre-health track that was being discussed earlier, I sort of had an interesting way of fitting in the requirements. I took the CASE exam for Gen Chem 2. The CASE exam is the Cornell Advanced Standing Exam, and you can take that for languages or for chemistry, for example. So that's what I did for Gen Chem 2, because in BME, you already cover the material in Gen Chem 2 very thoroughly in thermodynamics, which you take your sophomore spring. So I just took the CASE like based on that class pretty much. Other than that, I still had to take organic chemistry 2 because Orgo 1 is covered by BME. So I took Orgo 2. I took Orgo Lab as well as sort of an additional requirement, and then biochemistry. So that was all in 3 semesters. And then I took the MCAT just in January. And then with the MCAT, kind of the way I approached it last semester, I tried to be less involved in some of my extracurriculars. So I had extra time on the weekends to study for the MCAT. I won't lie and say that you're going to have a great social life while studying for the MCAT. It will be probably at like its all-time low point in college. So there is that, like definitely the months before you have to sort of prepare to just be like working more than usual. Yeah, but I think kind of the way I approached it starting last semester, I would study for the MCAT like primarily on weekends, sometimes during the week, but mostly I would go through like books on the weekends. And then Cornell actually has a really nice long winter break, which is very conducive to pre-meds who want to take the MCAT at the end of January. So you can just pretty much block off your entire winter break to knock out the MCAT. So that was my strategy. So then it wasn't interfering with like extracurriculars, or especially with COVID, like my social life at all, because I would have been at home anyway. So yeah, I think even though I crammed everything, it was possible. And I think just sort of preparing like in advance, like the MCAT semester is going to be a rough semester, and kind of like try to take easier classes that semester and lighten your extracurriculars if possible. I think that's definitely a good idea. But otherwise, yeah, if you go in, like if you're already thinking about pre-med, you're doing better than I was, you're already like ahead and you won't have to cram the classes into such a short time frame like I did. But yeah, it's certainly possible. Like you can definitely do it. Start on the track that Dr. Butcher was talking about, and you will be even more well prepared to go through it quickly and more easily. If there are more specific pre-med questions too, I can type more answers, but yeah.
We had some questions I know that came through in the registration, kind of about generally Cornell engineering, and maybe you can speak to this from your BME experience as well. But your thoughts on Cornell engineering, Cornell BME, and whether you feel like it's collaborative versus more competitive. And maybe Jordan, you haven't had a chance to speak too much, so maybe I'll start with you. Being in that first class, maybe kind of setting the tone. Kind of what did you see throughout your experience at Cornell engineering as a whole, and then maybe Cornell BME as well, about how you felt kind of the environment was, competitive versus collaborative?
Yeah, I would definitely say collaborative. I think that everything is kind of grounded in collaboration in a lot of ways. Like you do problem sets with other people in your class, you go to office hours. I feel like I always saying these things. You should go to office hours. I didn't go to office hours soon enough. They're super helpful. The TAs and the professors are super nice. It will save you a lot of time that you could spend doing other things, like being involved in too many student groups, like most of us are. And so I'd highly recommend, finding that group of people, as others have mentioned, that you can do P-sets with. And a lot of the time that also turns into a bit of a social gathering, because you're hanging out, and it might turn into like going to the bare necessities. We called it nasties when I was there, and I'm pretty sure that's not the official term. Going to nasties and getting like fries at like 2 in the morning while working on a problem set or studying for an exam or something like that. So I definitely found Cornell engineering as a whole to be super collaborative, and love that aspect of it. I would say that if anything, BME was probably then more collaborative, partially because my class was so small. Since there were so few of us, like if we all went office hours, it was essentially like a social gathering for the entire major, and it was pretty easy to get everyone at office hours at one time. So we were all pretty close, and we're usually working together in like one of the many wild seminar rooms that looked out onto Tower Road. And yeah, definitely did a lot of collaboration between problem sets, between a lot of project-based classes. And yeah, I've never felt particularly competitive at any Cornell class or anything like that, so.
Awesome. Anyone else want to share their experiences going through Cornell BME engineering? Yeah, Kevin, go ahead.
Yes, I would definitely agree. It's definitely more collaborative. I think just by nature of the major and sort of the classes you take, there's a lot of lab-based classes that you sort of have to go through, and you do those with lab groups. And then in your senior year, you take a senior design class, so you're also in a group then. So I think just like something that you really get accustomed to, and what you kind of learn works really well and is sort of the most efficient way to get things done is through that group setting. So it's something that maybe you're not super familiar with in the past. Like I know I personally, like my first 2 years in undergrad, I kind of like tried to get most of my work done by myself. But that like became really difficult just because I learned that like having sort of multiple people in a discussion about like a problem set or just any type of assignment is what helps me to understand material better. But yeah, you kind of just get used to that sort of collaborative environment. And I think it really just kind of helps sort of get through BME and sort of understand what it really is.
Yeah, definitely from my perspective as the coordinator, I see BME as having a lot of more hands-on coursework, a lot more of that practical coursework, those lab intensive courses, as well as that year-long senior design sequence. It gives you all an opportunity to work together a lot more. And I think those learning communities are incredibly valuable for your experience, to not only, feel like you're a part of a community here, but also, as you said, to understand that material a little bit better. So we have some questions here, a little bit about, kind of the difficulty maybe finding jobs as biomedical engineering students. So maybe I want to give Haley, Kristen a chance. I know y'all are industry focused, at this time. And, Haley, again, you were our first co-op student that we piloted that with many planning sessions. So you all maybe can speak to your experiences about not only getting those co-ops and internships experiences, but also kind of how you view the job market as BME students.
Yeah, I think that as a BME student, depending on the industry, so obviously, maybe a BME student going into automotive is not really a natural thing that you usually think of. But I was actually really surprised to learn once I, came on full time and stuff that about a third of the folks in my department have a BME background. So it's not totally uncommon. But in terms of just generally trying to find an internship in industry or a full-time opportunity, I think this kind of comes down to your dedication to researching and applying to jobs, and also how you kind of sell yourself as a student. So some maybe companies are just flat out going to say, no, we don't hire, biomedical engineering students, but they have reasons why. So maybe they only want an electrical engineering student for a specific position. But other companies are very much open to, folks of all engineering discipline backgrounds for their major. So I think it's just a matter of continuing to apply to internships and co-ops. And one kind of niche thing is that not too many, compared to other engineering colleges, not too many Cornell students on the whole do a co-op. And so if you are coming out of the BME department interested in doing a co-op, I think you're going to be kind of like a shining star, because you have this great experience as a biomedical engineer. And there are actually tons and tons of more related to BME other than automotive internships, like at Boston Scientific or Medtronic or those really classic BME type companies where you can do a co-op for 4 to 6 months. So I'd say that still as a BME major, you are just as much in a tough job market as any engineering student, but just put that dedication towards the computer and researching and applying to jobs.
Yeah, I definitely understand where that question's coming from, because it was definitely something that I feared as well. I think in the beginning of my junior year, I kind of realized that I was interested in more of like the computational side of healthcare and not so much like your traditional BME. So nothing really mechanical or like pharmaceutical or like cellular based. So it was definitely a challenge at first because I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my major. But definitely after a few internships and more advanced courses, so not like the core engineering curriculum in the beginning of like freshman year, like beyond those classes, I began to realize like what exactly I enjoyed doing and what I may be interested in doing in the future. And so once that was figured out, I began taking more classes outside of BME, kind of to like support like the BME foundation that I had already, because I knew I definitely wanted to do something within healthcare. So I started doing that, and that was really helpful to getting me to where I want to be career-wise. So for context, I mentioned this before, but I'm going to be working in data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence for a pharmaceutical company, which is typically something you might think a CS or an information science major might be doing. I definitely agree that like you want to have things on your resume that make you stand out. So even though you don't have like the ideal, like for example, in my situation, the ideal like computer science background that an employer might be looking for, you have things that make you stand out as someone who is an engineer and is interested in things in the healthcare industry. And as far as like the company I'm working for, Merck goes, I was really surprised to hear that they tend to hire a lot of BMEs for like these types of positions. And I'm pretty sure that other companies would also feel the same way. You just kind of have to search around and see like what exactly you want to do, what companies are willing to accommodate and like hire you for what you can bring and offer to the table.
All right, awesome. I know we're getting a little bit long right now, but I kind of wanted to ask a little bit more of a general question, kind of, and maybe get your answer, get each of you to maybe answer this a little bit. Kind of what made you decide eventually to pick BME as your major? And then eventually what helped you decide your concentration and your career path? So let's start with Jordan. So that you came here without BME,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah,
BME
I think-
came, and you still decided to switch over to us, even though
Yeah,
maybe
well,
you were
so
okay with not. So what
I
made you
was-
decide BME?
I was going to be a bioengineer. And I wasn't like thrilled at that idea because I was a lot more interested in the medical side of things. I actually came in pre-med and was planning on doing MD, PhD, and then halfway through took orgo and also realized I didn't want to be a doctor and decided to not do the med side of things, but still do the PhD. So I think I was in a lucky position in high school to have a little bit of research experience. I worked in biomaterials. So I came in knowing that I was biomedically inclined and knew that I was generally interested in engineering. So it became a question of what combination of existing majors would help me do the thing that I was most interested in. And when BME became an option, because it was the thing that I actually wanted to do in the first place, I kind of jumped on it. And yeah, didn't really regret it the rest of the 3 whatever years, whenever we declare our majors, that I was in the major. In terms of concentrations, that was actually where I did the harder pivot, I guess, for me. So I spent the first year and a half or so when I was in the Manasser and Estroff labs working on orthopedic tissue engineering. I came in thinking that I was going to do either biomaterials or the MCSE concentration and go into tissue engineering work. And I took the signals and systems course and realized that I was much more interested in instrumentation and imaging and want to get way deeper into coding and device design, and ended up kind of pivoting into that concentration. So I do think that the coursework sets you up pretty well for getting to try out all the different concentrations and get a sense of like what you'd be doing in each of the concentrations, and exposing you to stuff that you might not have experience with already to help you like make that decision.
Thank you, Jordan. Caleb, how about you? What got you into your, what made you choose BME and then your concentration?
Yeah, so I came into Cornell actually pretty interested in doing BME kind of from just I guess like experience that I had in high school. I knew that I really liked like engineering, like math, science, kind of that combination. But I was really, at first I was really kind of interested in like working on like prosthetics and, you know, things like that. And then I guess going through the major, I realized that it was just like a whole lot more that I didn't even really know existed. And I think for deciding on the concentrations, they have you take kind of one class in like each of the 4 categories. And they're really, really good at kind of introducing you into what you like will kind of be experiencing going down the line. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed the biomaterials and the kind of the immunology like courses that we were doing, and just how those materials relate to the body. So I ended up doing the biomaterials delivery track, really pretty soon after I decided on which track I was going to do, I joined a lab kind of working in those areas, and that kind of just solidified that was what I wanted to do. Because I really got to have hands-on experience of designing these particles that have biomaterials to deliver like vaccines, RNA, all these different components. And so just it's really cool that each of the tracks that you do are like they're specific tracks, but they're also really like tightly defined. And so just picking a specific one, really, it doesn't limit your experiences or opportunities, you can really make the most of whatever you end up choosing.
Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in about their decision to go BME?
Yeah, I can jump in.
Yeah.
So I actually came in as a chemical engineer. I didn't really have much of a biology background in high school. I was good at chemistry in high school and I kind of liked it. So I knew I wanted to like sort of go into medicine and pharmaceuticals. So at that time, it kind of made sense for me to kind of just choose chemi. But what I did was I took an intro to chemical engineering class my freshman year because that was what I had planned to go into. So I just wanted to find out more about it. And I realized that that wasn't for me at all, and that I really was missing the sort of biological component behind medicine. So naturally, I kind of just geared towards the BME path, and I took an intro bio class and realized that like that sort of intersection between biology and chemistry and sort of that drug formulation aspect is really what I wanted to do. And lo and behold, there was a concentration called drug delivery. So I kind of naturally just found my way to that. And then once I sort of started taking the concentration courses, that's really when I realized that that concentration was what I wanted to do. And then I ended up joining a lab which focused on drug delivery as well. And that also just sort of solidified that like that concentration was for me.
Awesome. Kristen, how about you?
Yeah, so coming into Cornell, I was pretty set on majoring in biomedical engineering. I think I can speak for most BMEs. I was really interested in the biology component of BME and also the engineering side, so like physics, math, pretty much all like STEM related courses. So that was it was probably pretty easy for me to set on that major. Of course, going into it, I didn't really know too much about it. And then as I began taking more classes, I realized I wanted to do more of some like the computational side of things, but really couldn't find the right concentration that would, I guess, fulfill my needs. So I was kind of originally I was going for drug delivery, as I think Kevin's in right now. And then I wanted to gravitate more towards instrumentation, but I didn't really know about the MCSE track. I thought that was mostly molecular and cellular things. I didn't know that the systems component of MCSE actually meant more of like what I wanted to do. So like data science, computational biology. And then once I realized that there was that little niche for me, I kind of gravitated towards that and began, I guess, making or molding my curriculum to fit like what I wanted to do. And I'm pretty happy with, I guess, how the curriculum ended up going for me to fit my needs.
Yeah, and I'd say one of the benefits too of having a newer major is how much more the program is still willing to continue to grow and pivot, because that concentration used to be molecular, cellular, and tissue engineering. And then we really figured out like the strengths that we had on the whole larger systems engineering side, not only within our department, but also the other courses we can leverage outside of BME within, CS, within the biometrics department, to really build up kind of that more data analytics and computational side of things, the computational bio people as well. So that's been nice too about the undergraduate major from my perspective. How about you, Steffi?
Sure. So I kind of sound a bit like a hodgepodge of some other people at the beginning. So kind of like Kristen, I also just knew that I really liked biology a lot and physics. I liked them in high school and I wanted whatever I did in college to sort of encompass those two things. And then similarly to Caleb, I was really interested in prosthetics. I saw this really crazy video of she was a ballerina, and since I dance, it was really relevant. She had she had part of her leg taken off, and what they did, since it was her calf that was removed, they took her foot and they like rotated it so that it could act like the joint would bend like a knee, and they reattached it to her knee and attached a prosthetic so she could still dance. And I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So I came here thinking like, oh, I really want to do that. That was like what my essay was about when I got admitted. And then sort of going through the first year, I became vaguely interested in pre-med, but not really. And I started to realize that like biology and specifically cancer was more what I was interested in. So then I joined the Fishbach lab, which is a breast cancer research group. And I fell in love with that over the summer. I started thinking like, yeah, research is really what I want to do. Like, this is what I can see myself doing long term, and especially cancer, which I just find very fascinating from a biological standpoint. So that like landed me very solidly in majoring in BME. And then in terms of like pre-med, that just sort of added on because I felt like research wasn't enough in terms of patient care. And I felt like for me, the human aspect was something that's really important and is very easily lost in a research only setting or even in an industry setting. Like for me, that patient interaction was super crucial, and just like being a human in the face of healthcare and not just like a scientist. I really learned that that was just hugely valuable to me, and that landed me in being pre-med. And then when it came time to pick a concentration, I was pretty torn between biomaterials and drug delivery and MCSE. And I kind of thought if I go either way, like this will set me up well for pre-med. I do think actually of my pre-med friends in BME, we're pretty 50-50 on who's MCSE versus drug delivery. But I ultimately picked MCSE because actually the lab that I work in, the Fishbach lab, that is technically a tissue engineering lab or an MCSE lab. Dr. Fishbach teaches the MCSE lab course, which I really wanted to take that class. And I thought, oh, well, a great way to take it would be to be an MCSE. And I was also excited about the other concentration courses offered in MCSE, more so than I was in biomaterials and drug delivery. Kind of ironically, I think that I actually want to do my PhD in something more biomaterials related. So go figure, I guess, but you are still able to take biomaterials courses within the MCSE concentration, which is what I'm doing now. Like I'm taking a biomaterials graduate course that I have really enjoyed thus far. So yeah, I think kind of what everyone else has said, like you can make it work for you. And if you're sort of gravitating towards that intersection of human health with like mathematical and engineering, like design concepts, it's a really great space to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I'll stress that there's, you know, that concentration choice doesn't like lock you into, you know, your postgraduate plans, right? So, you know, you might be MCSE as an undergrad, but maybe you want to explore biomaterials as a grad student. You know, maybe you picked MCSE like Haley because it worked with your degree plan, but maybe you've got more of a biomechanics interest and you're going to end up, you know, applying more biomechanics once you're actually out there in industry. So it doesn't lock you into a career plan. It does allow you to develop a more in-depth set of skills within that area. But it certainly doesn't lock you into one specific pathway going forward, which is really great. One of the other things that Steffi mentioned there that I just want to circle back to is just remembering, you know, the idea of biomedical engineers being in this for, you know, that human aspect. It's all about, you know, kind of reinventing human health and treatment of disease and kind of returning human health. And that human aspect, I think, is one of the great things that I love about the Cornell BME program. You know, we've got connections with a variety of different community engaged partnerships. For example, the Cornell Cancer Community Partnership. I know, Steffi, you've presented with them, you've worked with them a lot. You know, we have patient and survivor panels come into some of our classes, like the experiential learning seminar that we do in sophomore and junior year. You know, Kristen and Caleb, I know you've seen that presentation as well with the panel coming in. So, you know, being involved in, you know, kind of restoring human health, I think that's what sets biomedical engineering apart. And I think it's one of the things that makes me really excited to work with this program. Before I let you all go, thank you all very much for joining us. And if you can end with a quick lightning round, what's one of your favorite non-engineering classes that you've taken here? So everyone wants to know the fun liberal studies courses, the fun writing seminars that you do, the fun PE courses. So I'll start. Kevin, go.
Yeah, so it's a class I'm taking right now. It's called Human Bonding, and it's actually huge. It's like over 1,000 students right now, because it's all virtual. So they just maxed out capacity. But it's all about just like human interaction and how you develop bonds with people throughout your life, and like the sort of psychology and science behind that. Very, very interesting.
Awesome. Kristen.
I would have to agree with that. I'm also in human bonding. It's extremely interesting, so relevant to life. I'm like, as I'm taking the course, I'm kind of like analyzing all of my relationships all around. I'm kind of like, oh, okay, this makes sense now. Like everything that has happened in the past in terms of human interactions and bonds, like they all make sense right now. So I think it's definitely a great course to take.
All right. Jordan.
I guess I have two answers because my first answer is kind of a cop-out. Chris Schaefer teaches a science policy bootcamp class that like got me into science policy as a senior at Cornell, and it's very hands-on, fantastic class that I like definitely recommend people taking. And I think you can take it as a liberal studies now, I think, because I petitioned it into the list when I was a senior, because it's an engineering course and they wouldn't let me otherwise. Outside of that, I actually came into Cornell wanting to do either a minor in creative writing or French, and I really enjoyed intro to creative writing. So definitely recommend that.
All right. Haley.
I took a class called Intergroup Dialogue Project, and they're these like really intimate classes, usually less than 20 people, and it's led by students just like you. And basically, you just sit around for a semester and talk about like social identities and social justice, hot topics in society, and things like that. So it's a really interesting time to like really intimately get to know kind of 20 random people at Cornell and talk about some really deep stuff. So it was a good class.
Steffi.
So a class that I really liked, it's in the same department as human bonding, is gender and psychopathology. It kind of walks through, like psychopathology is like the study of mental health and mental diseases. So it kind of walks through like major mental health disorders and how they differ in men and women. And you kind of look at it through multiple social lenses. And it was just so fascinating. Like every single day I was so into it. Like, yeah, it was fantastic. The professor is an incredible woman. She's so sweet and helpful and such a good instructor. Like I learned a ton. Some of it was even on the MCAT, which an extra perk that I didn't even think would be there. So fantastic class, super interesting, good social issues, great conversation, just amazing.
All right, we're passing the baton over to Caleb. Home stretch.
Yeah, I'd say, I guess one of them was marketing principles. It's part of the business minor, but just one of the parts that really struck me was the different ways that they can, that companies really like place their pricing strategies and their advertisement to basically get you to buy what you don't actually need. It was really kind of interesting.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us. I hope you learned a lot about Cornell BME. I hope you learned a lot about Cornell engineering, and I hope you learned about just Cornell in general. And you can see that the students are surviving and sleeping, which is vital. It's a non-negotiable. You got to sleep, and you got to feed yourself, take care of yourself. But thank you all for joining us. No matter what you end up choosing with your major, whether you're coming to Cornell or you're still deciding, I really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us. If you have any questions at all, you have my contact information. Please continue to send it out. We'll continue to update our virtual open house site, and we'll try to answer as many other questions that came through on the registration form that we maybe didn't get to through tonight's webinar. Again, thank you for taking your time. Thank you for joining us, and take care.